Hello, America. Every week we are going to set out the POV and everything that we know about these different candidates that are running for president of the United States. Tonight, we get to start with Beto. Let me actually begin this by asking you this simple question. What is more dangerous, the person with radical ideas or the person with radically no ideas and is open to influence for power? Barack Obama infamously wrote in his autobiography, The Audacity of Hope, and I quote, "I serve as a blank screen on which people of vastly different political stripes project their own views." Blank screen, empty suit, however you want to describe it, this is what made Obama such a dangerous candidate. In the beginning, he had very few ideas and zero policy recommendations that were truly his. His agenda was literally two words: hope and change. Now, what that might actually have looked like was really anybody's guess. I remember asking, hope and change to what? It's the reason why many of us were concerned over Obama and who he kept company with, who was influencing him. When people like Jeremiah Wright and Bill Ayers were projecting onto that blank screen and policy advocates like Van Jones were filling up that empty suit, it was a little concerning. Well, just a few years later, and bottom-up activism was actually influencing government policy. Obama didn't campaign on any of it, but that's what ended up happening. Now, there's two ways to win an election. The first one, say basically anything on any policy while simultaneously talking about unity and hope, a la Obama. And the second way is take a hard stance on some hot topic issues. Think of immigration with Trump, or socialism a la Bernie Sanders or Kamala Harris. And don't get me wrong, the radical ideas from Sanders and Harris are dangerous, but the person that just might be the biggest threat to our country has just announced his candidacy.
Amy and I are happy to share with you that I'm running to serve you as the next president of the United States of America. There's a lot more to come, but I want to leave you with this. The only way for us to live up to the promise of America is to give it our all and to give it for all of us. We are truly now, more than ever, the last great hope of Earth. At this moment of maximum peril and maximum potential, let's show ourselves and those who will succeed us in this great country just who we are and what we can do.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I think we all saw this one coming. O'Rourke raised more money in his Senate campaign than any other candidate in the country in history. The left wanted Ted Cruz's Senate seat so badly, they gave this man nearly $80 million. And they turned him into a rock star hipster cruising through the Whataburger parking lot on a skateboard. He was even recorded and then blasted all over social media, air drumming in his car, The Who. And the Charisma campaign hypnotized the left far beyond the Lone Star State. Over $20 million flowed into O'Rourke's campaign from outside of the state of Texas. And the magic appears to be happening all over again. Poof. On the very first day he announced his candidacy, O'Rourke raised over $6 million, destroying the fundraising efforts of candidates like Sanders and Harris. And Beto's opponents in both the election and the media are scared to death. But why? The socialist magazine Jacobin called Beto, quote, listen to this, an ideologically empty politician standing for everything and nothing in particular. Oh yeah, he's running against Bernie. So of course the socialists are feeling a little threatened. But even the mainstream media outlets are now turning against the one untouchable skateboarding rock star. The Guardian came out swinging against O'Rourke, citing his inconsistent voting record, something they could have easily reported on, when he was running for Senate, but they didn't. And then there's the recent barrage by the Washington Post. One article paints a bizarre picture of a man that likes to put feces in food bowls and try to trick his wife. That's so funny. She doesn't know she's about to eat baby poop. The other calls out the fact that Beto really doesn't seem to have any actual policy ideas. And then there's the Reuters exclusive that revealed Beto's previous membership in one of the most notorious hacking groups in the entire world. I'm going to come back to this one after the break, but soon after this came out, articles posted from Beto that are still accessible on the hacker website began to come out. Posting under the hacker handle Psychedelic Warlord, Beto wrote about everything from punk rock music, the evils of money, to child murder fantasies. Quote, as I neared the young ones, I kept putting my weight on the right foot, keeping the accelerator pedal on the floor until I heard the crashing of the two children on the hood, and then the sharp cry of pain from one of the two. I was so fascinated for a moment that when, after I had stopped my vehicle, I sat there in a daze, sweet visions filling my head. Now, I don't know about you, but if my child wrote that, I would expect a knock from the county or the doctors or the school saying, your kid's not around a gun because look at this crazy crap he's writing, right? Now, if I'm a voter and I'm on the fence over whether, do I vote for Beto or Ted Cruz, the fact that one of the two hangs out with cyber criminals and fantasizes about murdering children kind of settles it for me, but you'd have to have a media that would actually tell you all of this, and they sat out. Keep in mind, this is the same media that began to track down anyone that knew Brett Kavanaugh back in high school to find out how often the teenager went to parties and did he go poo-poo in the potty when he was 2. This is the same group of activists and media outlets that all did a collective freak out when an 18-year-old girl wore a Chinese-style dress to a prom, claiming cultural appropriation. But call out a multi-million-dollar white Irishman for using a Spanish nickname? What? Never. That's not cultural appropriation. It's just what happens. One thing is for sure, both the left and the right are equally unsure on what they have in Robert Francis O'Rourke. The far left, which is growing larger seemingly by the day, don't like the fact that he won't fully commit to their agenda. The right has no idea what he stands for because he literally won't say. I want you to go to his website now. You'd expect to see a section titled, Where I Stand on the Issues, What I'm For, Who I Am, What I Believe, something like that. No. Instead, this is what you get. A big sweaty picture of Beto with 2 links. One lets you donate, and the other lets you shop for t-shirts. Now, if that doesn't sum him up in a nutshell, nothing does. Good on marketing, good on organizing, great on raising money, but not really sure what I want to accomplish. And that is the real reason why O'Rourke is so dangerous. Not only do Republicans and Democrats not know what he believes in, but I don't think he actually does either. That's quite a charge to make, but the Washington Post recently quoted O'Rourke asking constituents, quote, to shape him in the presidential candidate that they want him to be, to help him draft a vision for America. You know, all great leaders have a vision, and then they bring us along with that. He's fishing, because I believe he doesn't have any idea of what he believes. He's practically begging for someone to fill his empty suit, to project on his blank screen. He's channeling Barack Obama, but I actually think it's a lot worse. The story of Robert Francis O'Rourke is a crazy look into the life of a wandering lost soul that both has no clue as to what he wants or who he is, and is willing to become whatever he has to be in order to fit in. Even if Democrats reject socialism and nominate Beto over Sanders or Harris, in the end, socialism just may be what they get anyway. More on that when we continue. All right, when you're talking about Beto, the best way to describe Robert Francis O'Rourke is to imagine a Where's Waldo picture puzzle, where not only is the audience struggling to find Waldo, but even Waldo is just like, I don't know who I am, I don't know where I am. He's more confused than anybody else. So the Where's Beto would be a game that O'Rourke would have to embark on himself. This past January, he did, traveling the country to basically try to find himself. Oh dear God, you don't have to travel anywhere to find yourself. You're right where you think you are. From the road to find himself, he blogged, quote, "I've been stuck lately, in and out of a funk. My last day of work was January 2nd. It's been more than 20 years since I was last not working. Maybe if I get moving, on the road, meet people, learn about what's going on, where they live, have some adventure, go where I don't know, and I'm not known. It'll clear my head, reset. I'll think new thoughts, break out of the old loops that I've been stuck in." Well, he's quite a guy, isn't he? But that pretty much sums up Beto's entire life. He is constantly in a state of remaking or finding himself, desperately trying to fit in at all costs, searching for an identity and approval. But what does he actually believe? What does he stand for? Well, it depends on who's influencing him. At any given time, you look to the people around him. Remember, he's a blank screen. He's an empty suit. Everyone has already talked about how cool Beto is for being a young punk rocker, right? This is him jamming out at a local access TV show back in El Paso. It's not good. But there's definitely nothing wrong with it, unless you're forced to listen to the music. And Beto's image as a punk rock rebel was consistent with some of the company that he was recently reported to be hanging out with. O'Rourke, as I mentioned before the break, was one of the founding members of the elite hacker group, Cult of the Dead Cow. Now, they're the oldest hacking group in the country, responsible for creating software that enables hackers to remotely take control of Windows-based computers. Oh, good. Now, there's no evidence that psychedelic warlord, Robert Francis, sorry, the guy has more nicknames than Jimmy the Lip and Tommy Two Tones. But there is no evidence that he did actually any crime, any cyber crime, but he did do quite a lot of blogging for the group. And all of the blog posts are still active to this day on the Cult of the Dead Cow website. This one, keeping to his punk rock persona, rails against those evil ultra-trendies that dare to listen to the Sex Pistols and pretend that they're real punks. Hello? But no one's talking about the dramatic change of character in O'Rourke. This is what he went through when he left his hacker and punk friends in the early 90s and then moved for school to the East Coast. Now, where would a young, bring down the man type of punk rocker go to school? Really? Obviously, to the Woodbury Forest School for Boys, of course. We are so punk rock here. Woodbury is one of the most prestigious boarding schools in the country. Other alumni includes, big businessmen, congressmen, judges, even one of the Bushes. Now, I want you to watch this and look how rebellious that looks. Why just write about ultra-trendies when you can rail against the man while playing golf, acting in a school play, playing lacrosse, and totally rebelling in your pastel polo shirt with your khaki shorts? Something tells me that the psychedelic warlord might have been going by the name of Robert Francis at this point. But call that a hunch. O'Rourke's dance with the elites didn't stop at Woodbury. After graduation, he went on to that punk rock school of Columbia University, where he became a real outcast when he was the co-captain for Columbia's rowing crew. So in other words, the former punk rocking hacker had somehow morphed himself into the Winklevoss twins from the Social Network movie. You know what I'm saying? So then we go to the next stage in This Is Your Life, Beto edition. O'Rourke now had an elite level education. He was rubbing shoulders with some of the most prestigious shoulders in the country. After graduating from Columbia, he moves back to El Paso, and he was then rubbing shoulders with other shoulders. In 1995, Beto and his friends were arrested for burglary at the University of Texas at El Paso. Usually people go to Columbia from Texas when they're good, and then they go bad, and then they come back, and after a while they're good when they return home. It's kind of the opposite story with Beto. Keep in mind, he had already graduated from a different college and had no ties to this university. But in 1998, he was also arrested for a DWI. The police report states that he was driving at a high rate of speed. He hit another vehicle and then he tried to flee the scene. Now, he's been questioned on this before, and this is usually his response. Watch.
20 years ago, I drove drunk. A terrible mistake. There's no explanation or justifying that. Since then, gone on with friends to start a business, with Amy to raise a family, serving my community in the United States Congress. And in many ways, that mistake did not define me. I was able to go on and do these things. But I know to some degree that's a function of the fact that I'm a white man in this country. I know that if I were African American, if I had been arrested with marijuana, it might be very hard for me to then get a job. I'd have to check a box on an application form. I couldn't finance my student loans. That might very well narrow my choices and options in life, as it does for so many in a country that has the largest prison population on the face of the planet. One that
Okay, we got it. Do you see the obvious white male privilege identity politics? You don't go to where, you don't just leave it at like, no, I'm drinking and driving, and by the way, here it is. It says that you hit another car, because we don't ever hear this right here, and then again later. I asked him if he was hurt. He needed medical attention. Defendant was unable to be understood due to slurred speech. He had glossy eyes and smelled of alcohol on his beverage. I asked him if he had any alcohol this morning, and he said yes, he had. A green color Volvo passed at a high rate of speed. The vehicle lost control moments later and struck a truck traveling in the same direction. After the driver, defendant, struck the truck, it sent the defendant's vehicle across the center median and into a complete stop facing eastbound. The defendant driver then attempted to leave the scene. Both the burglary that happened in another college he didn't go to and DWI charges were later dismissed. Privilege, yeah. I didn't get that when I was a kid. I'm sure that that his dad was a judge probably had nothing to do with it. My dad was a baker, so I didn't get the same kind of things boys did whose dads were judges. But who is he? Is he the rebellious punk rocker, also known as a psychedelic warlord? Or is he the elite prep school co-captain of the crew team named Robert Francis? Or is he just Beto, getting arrested every few years, but not getting into any trouble because of his daddy? Well, don't ask Beto, because he couldn't tell you either. He's whomever he has to be. He's a chameleon. He constantly changes colors for his own benefit. In 2005, it was a very busy year for our confused hero. Beto got married to the daughter of William Sanders, a.k.a. the Warren Buffett of real estate, with a net worth of over $20 billion. At the same time, O'Rourke decided he was going to run for the El Paso City Council. Why? Well, he said, quote, "The kind of systematic corruption that has long permeated this city's leadership, I'm there to stop." Now that's interesting, because just a few months after he was elected, Beto's father-in-law, remember the one with billions, began to unveil a new project in El Paso under the real estate firm called the Paso del Norte Group. Well, the plan called for a complete overhaul of one of the most iconic and historic neighborhoods in the city. When the plan was introduced, Beto made the motion to begin the process of adopting the plan. No recusal, none at all. Oh, and at the same time, Beto was also a dues-paying member of Paso del Norte. And Beto wanted to get into politics to rid the city of corruption? That's strange. That's a weird way to start. Let me restate this for a second. Beto's billionaire real estate tycoon father-in-law introduced a city redevelopment plan after Beto made it to the city council, where it would have to be approved. Beto was a member of the firm, and he made the motion in City Hall to proceed. This is corruption with a capital C. You don't get much dirtier than this. The plan also called for the city's Hispanic community to be displaced from their homes and businesses using eminent domain. Oh, I know how many people just love doing that. This is reported by the Texas Observer. The El Paso City mayor boasted that there were multiple ways he could force people out of their homes. Quote, "I don't have to use eminent domain. All I have to do is take the offer down to the Central Appraisal District and allow property to be taxed as real market value. If necessary, police and fire departments will assist in explaining and enforcing violations." This is the plan supported by Beto O'Rourke, the great defender of immigrants and minorities. I wonder what the local Hispanic community thought about it. Oh, well, we know. Watch.
Hasta ahora que entró esta nueva cosa que está en el barrio, nos tienen a todos asustados.
Hay mucha gente que está trabajando muy fuerte para asustar a la gente que vive.
¿Y sí sabes de dónde?
Sí.
¿Sí sabes? Porque es tu suegro. Ahí lo dice claramente. Te estoy diciendo.
Eso es su opinión.
No es mi opinión, Beto. Te estoy diciendo lo que está pasando. Entonces mucha gente ya tiene sus casas de venta.
Pero el plan se desarrolló por 2 años en secreto y después lo revelaron. Si no nos incluyeron en estos 2 años de hacerlo el plan, ¿qué esperamos ahorita? Y ya está hecho, que el plan ya está finalizado. Y también quiero decir que ustedes han tratado a la gente de este barrio con una falta de respeto
So
tremenda.
ask the people what they saw. If they saw any corruption firsthand, they know exactly who this is. A man who claims to be against corruption and a champion of the people, but pushed his father-in-law's real estate deals, willing to use eminent domain and have people live in fear. A man who talks about privilege, but as of 2015 has a net worth of $8.9 million. All of that made after getting into politics, of course. And a man that represented such a heavily dominated far-left community as the Texas 16th, where, according to 538, a Republican candidate only had a 1 in 100 chance of getting elected, but actually voted with President Trump 30% of the time. O'Rourke has been one of the leading champions combating climate change and even signaled support for the new Green Deal. But while he was saying things like that in public, he was also voting to end the oil export ban, open up drilling in the Gulf of Mexico, and help speed up natural gas exports. Like everything else in his life, Beto's voting record shifts with whoever is influencing him at the time. Are you a middle-of-the-road Democrat and intrigued that Beto is at least somebody likely to not support socialism from the rest of the field? If so, buyer beware. Beto's blank screen. He's an empty suit. He doesn't know who he is, which means you'll never know who's waiting right around the corner in his suit.